"Mom, I'm pregnant, and it's a human's baby." I had rehearsed the words over 1,000 times in my mind, but they still burned my tongue as I said them aloud. My mother, Supreme Chancellor Ayalari of the Marian High Council, turned slowly in her crystalline throne. Her eyes, violet slits framed in silver, narrowed as silence swallowed the air around us. "Say that again," she whispered, her voice dangerously calm. I took a breath and stepped forward, my boots clicking against the obsidian tiles of the Grand Hall of Reconciliation. "It's true. His name is Kael. He's a human. From Earth. And I'm carrying his child." Her gaze pierced through me like plasma fire. "You shame our bloodline, Nyari." "Yes. My name is Nyari Velthra, firstborn daughter of the most feared and revered ruler in 3 quadrants of the galaxy. Raised in the sky spires of Miravel, schooled in quantum diplomacy, trained in gravitational combat, and, until 3 Earth cycles ago, destined to become the next sovereign emissary of the Undralan Pact. That destiny changed the moment I met him. The diplomatic vessel Solstice Ember had docked near Terran Orbit Station Delta, a forgotten relic of Earth's fading space program. I was there to deliver a Morayan peace accord to the human envoys. It was supposed to be routine: scan the station, deliver the encryption codes, make a graceful departure. Instead, a reactor implosion on the lower deck ruptured time protocols. I was thrown into a dimensional rift, trapped in sublight orbit with failing oxygen and flickering systems. My distress beacon pulsed uselessly. That's when he found me, Kael Draven, a former Terran rescue pilot turned scavenger. He shouldn't have been anywhere near the Delta Zone. It was off limits, too unstable. But he said something felt off. That some cosmic pull led him there. He broke open my pod with nothing but a torch saw and raw courage. I should have killed him. My mother would have demanded it. Interaction with primitive species without council clearance was punishable by neural erasure. But I didn't. Because when he pulled off his helmet and looked into my eyes, I didn't see a savage. I saw someone I hadn't met in decades. Someone free. He took me to his home, a makeshift habitat built from Earth debris and alien. Scraps on the dark side of Luna B, an outlawed moonlet not even mapped by our star charts. He called it Sanctum. There was no protocol, no hierarchy, no lectures on genetic duty, just Kael. He taught me how to cook Terran food, though I could barely stomach it. I taught him how to recalibrate antimatter coils using only auric vibration. He laughed every time. I floated 3 inches above the floor during meditation. I learned to love the way his hands moved when he fixed things. So meticulous, so real. And then one night, under twin moons fractured by asteroid belts, we broke the prime code. I touched his skin without gloves. He touched my heart without meaning to. We weren't supposed to fall in love, but I did. 2 sentinels charged forward, Zither-class hybrids, half organic, half programmed. I had once trained with them in the high spire arenas. Now they came at me with restraint clamps and null blades, but I was no longer the docile emissary in training. As they moved, I closed my eyes and whispered the phrase Kael had taught me. On Sanctum. Freedom isn't given, it's taken. I activated the kinetic surge stored beneath my ribcage, a forbidden implant Kael had customized using scavenged Undralan tech. A wave of hyper-energy blasted outward, throwing both sentinels against the obsidian pillars. Guards screamed. Alarms wailed. I didn't wait. I ran, through corridors etched with my childhood memories, past the shrine of my ancestors, past the memorial of my sister Lurea, who had died in the wars I was too young to fight. I ran until the sky turned blue again, until I reached my old private hangar, still untouched, still coded to my DNA, and there, hidden beneath layers of forgotten clearance tapes, sat my old ship, the Whisper Light. I powered it up with trembling hands. My breath hitched as the interface lit to life. Its pulse matched my own heartbeat. the gates of Miravel opened, with a scream of fractured protocol warnings, and I vanished into the void. I thought Kael would be angry. I had left without warning. I hadn't even told him I was pregnant. But when I stepped out of the ship and into the swirling twilight of Sanctum's barren plains, I saw him standing there with a wrench in one hand and oil smeared on his cheek. "Hey, Starfire," he grinned, using the nickname he made up when he couldn't pronounce Nyari. "Took you long enough." Tears streamed down my face before I could answer. He ran toward me. I collapsed into his arms. "I'm sorry," I choked. "I'm so sorry." He pulled back just enough to look at me. "What happened?" I placed his hand gently on my stomach. His breath caught, and then he laughed. A wild, beautiful sound. "Guess we're not just fixing engines anymore, huh?" I smiled through my tears. But the joy was short-lived. Because above us, Mirian tracking drones blinked into existence. Silent, glowing, deadly. They had followed me, and they weren't alone. Kael stood there in the doorway of the Grand Council Hall, framed by smoke, starlight, and sheer defiance. His coat was torn, dust clung to his skin, and plasma soot marked one side of his jaw. But to me, he looked like a living revolution. I hadn't summoned him. I had begged him not to follow, but Kael Draven had never been good at listening to rules, especially not when I was involved. "Lower your weapons," he said, gaze cutting across the room like an energy blade. The Mirian guards hesitated. Not out of fear, but confusion. No human had ever walked into the core of Miravel without being immediately vaporized. And yet Kael stood, pulse cannon slung at his back, one hand holding a cracked comm disc. My mother remained still, but I could feel her pulse rise through the psychic thread we shared. A pure-blood Mirian, she had never been challenged like this, not by the Council, not by invaders, and certainly never by a human. "You defy the laws of our kind," she said slowly. "You breach our sanctum. You threaten my daughter's legacy with your impurity." Kael raised an eyebrow. "Funny. Back on Ganira, she told me her legacy was her own." He looked at me. Our eyes met, and everything in the room, everything else, faded. Then the shooting started. Flashbangs, plasma, bursts, vortex grenades. The guards responded like clockwork. Highborn Mirian soldiers trained in lethal formation. Kael, never one to go quietly, fired back. Not to kill, just to escape. He rolled behind a pillar of glimmerstone, using the terrain. The way a desert wolf uses shadow. Fast, precise. "Nyari!" he shouted. "Move!" I did. Instinct kicked in. The part of me trained at the Sivian Academy of War. I ignited the fusion ring embedded in my palm. My weapon unfolded mid-air, a blade of white plasma with a curved edge, coded to my genetic signature. I sliced down 2 guards with surgical accuracy, not to kill, but to incapacitate. I said, "Stand down," I roared, my voice reverberating. Off the walls. No one listened. From the second level, High Magistrate Kairoth leapt into view, his ceremonial staff transforming into a particle cannon mid-fall. I knew him. I had debated him on trade reform. Now he aimed straight for Kael's chest. My blade intercepted the beam, barely. "Tsiroth, don't make me turn this into a war," I warned, holding the blade to his throat. "This is war," he hissed. "You brought it into our house when you brought him." Kael grabbed my arm. "We have to leave, now." There was no time to argue. We sprinted through the side corridor, past the bioluminescent walls that once housed my childhood. Through hidden lifts and forgotten tunnels, we escaped the palace zone into the underbelly of Miravel, into the outgrowth. This was no place for royalty, no sky bridges, no diamond towers, just rusted synth metal, graffiti in 13 dialects, and the low thrum of rebellion. I hadn't walked these streets since I was 15, since I snuck out to hear anti-council music in the Undercity with my cousin Zaina. Kael moved fast, his hand never leaving mine. Got a ship docked at Fathom Point, cloaked. AI says we've got 15 minutes before they find us. Then we have 12, I said. They'll triangulate us before the AI can recalculate. We ducked beneath a broken gravrail system. Skimmers roared overhead. Civilians scattered when they saw me, either out of fear or recognition. Probably both. 10 minutes later, we reached the extraction point. Kael's ship, the Wraithling, shimmered into visibility beneath the cloak. A small, fast-class stealth jumper with custom mods. It looked like hell had chewed it up and spit it back out. I loved it. He opened the hatch. Ladies first. We barely stepped inside when the sky split open. 3 Valkyrie-class interceptors descended like judgment itself. Council hunters, designed to paralyze and extract fugitives before they even realized they'd been targeted. Kael's face went pale. They tracked us this fast? They didn't need to, I said. My mother knew I'd run. She laid the, trap before I even came home. Then what do we? A voice boomed across the clearing. Nyari of Veltra. By order of the Tri-Crescent Court, surrender yourself and the creature known as Kael Draven. Your child is to be seized and studied. Seized, studied. I looked down at my belly. I had sworn I would protect what lived inside me, even if it meant tearing the stars apart. I turned to Kael. Do you trust me? He blinked. With everything. I stepped outside. The guards raised their weapons, but I raised my hand first, projecting a field-wide distortion pulse. I'm not here to surrender, I said calmly. I'm here to warn you. General Histrel, one of my mother's most loyal enforcers, stepped forward. You are outnumbered, Lady Nyari. Surrender now, and the child will be treated with dignity. Dignity? I laughed bitterly. You don't even see him as alive. He's not your subject. He's not your test. And what is he to you? Histrel challenged. He's our future. And with that, I pressed the trigger, embedded in my wristplate. Kael's ship exploded, not from destruction, but from rebirth. It reconfigured mid-air, dispersing nanoplasma drones that triggered a visual overload. The entire zone erupted in spiraling light and sonic disruption. By the time they blinked, we were gone. Escape. Across the Black Sea, the Wraithling roared through. Subspace like a creature unleashed. We jumped into phase drift mode, an illegal tech Kael salvaged from an old Valen smuggler fleet. It bent space just enough to confuse long-range tracking, but not enough to tear the ship apart. The navboard flickered red. Kael gripped the controls with both hands. We've got about 12 hours before this thing burns out. Plenty of time, I said. We're not going far. He looked at me, puzzled. Where are we going? Home. I thought this was your home. No, I said quietly. This was a cage. We're going where I should have taken you the first time, he leaned back. And where's that? I looked out the window at the spirals of time-punctured space. Viridian. His eyes widened. The lost city? I smiled. Not lost, just waiting. The Moraean archives call it a myth, a city carved into the bones of a dead star, built by the first dreamers who believed love could bend the laws of biology and fate. It was a sanctuary once, before the Great Silence buried it. But I knew the coordinates. I had memorized them in secret, encoded them into a lullaby my grandmother used to sing. It's where the firstborn were created, children of mixed lineage, beings who bridged impossible gaps, beings like our child. No council would follow us there, not because they couldn't, but because they feared what was buried beneath its silver soil. As we slept in the drift, I watched Kael's face. Even in sleep, he twitched, eyes darting behind closed. Lids, jaw clenched as if reliving battles he never told me about. I touched his arm. You're safe, I whispered. And for the first time since fleeing Miravel, I believed it too. But safety, was an illusion. Because in the distant dark, another ship had found us. And it wasn't Merian. It was something worse. Much worse. The sound of the ship's engines hummed beneath us, a comforting vibration that had always soothed me in moments of uncertainty. I tried to focus on it, trying to anchor myself as the stars stretched out before us, warping into the surreal beauty of phase drift. But my mind kept drifting back to the impending threat. We were being pursued. I had hoped, even for a moment, that we'd be able to slip through the cracks, into the unknown, hidden behind the shimmer of distorted space. But somewhere out there, another ship had found us. I could feel it. The hair on the back of my neck prickled. It wasn't just that the ship was out there. It was something deeper. A presence. A cold certainty that what was coming wasn't just a chase. It was a reckoning. Kael sat in the pilot's seat, his face bathed in the pale glow of the control. Bored. His fingers danced over the console, but his mind was far away. I could see it in the tightness of his jaw, the set of his shoulders, and the way his fingers moved almost too carefully. "What is it?" I asked, even though I already knew. Didn't answer immediately. Instead, he punched a few coordinates into the nav panel. His gaze was fixed forward, but I could sense his thoughts pulling at the seams of his calm demeanor. His silence spoke volumes. "There's a ship following us," he finally said, voice low. "I've tried every trick I know, but they're tracking us through the drift. It's like they've got our signature." I bit my lip, trying to force the rising panic down. "How are they doing it?" "I don't know. The tech they're using doesn't match anything in the fleet archives. Not Merian, not human. Something else entirely. Something worse." I moved to sit beside him, watching the stars streak across the dark expanse. They felt so distant now, unreachable, like everything in the universe had conspired to separate us from safety. Kael clenched his fists, pressing them against the console, his knuckles going white. "We're not going to make it to Viridian in time." "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning in closer, needing to understand, needing him to stay grounded in reality. He turned his head, eyes meeting mine, his face drawn with a tension that mirrored my own. "This ship can't outrun them. Not with the drift in this state. And even if we could jump to Viridian, we don't know what's waiting for us there." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "We have to take the risk. There's no other option. If we don't get there, we don't have a chance." He nodded, but I saw the hesitation in his eyes. He wanted to protect me. I could feel that much. He always had. But protecting me wasn't going to be enough now. We had to face what was coming, together. The journey felt like it lasted an eternity. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Time had a funny way of warping in the drift. The ship held together, but just barely. The Wraithling's outer hull groaned, under the pressure of the unstable fields as we pushed further, faster. The trail of the unknown ship, our stalker, grew stronger, closer with every jump. I watched the navigation display shift from one set of coordinates to the next. We were nearing Viridian, but the dread inside me was a gnawing presence, like a hollow pit opening wide within my chest. When Kael finally broke the silence, his voice was barely a whisper. "There's something wrong about this," he muttered. His eyes flicking from the screen to me, his face pale under the artificial light. "I don't know what it is, but I feel like we're walking into a trap." "I've known about Viridian all my life," I said softly, keeping my voice steady despite the growing knot of fear in my stomach. "It's the last safe place, Kael. The last place where they won't be able to reach us." His gaze softened, but there was still that doubt in his eyes. "Do you really believe that?" I swallowed hard. "I have to. It's the only choice we have left." As we neared the coordinates for Viridian, the ship began to behave erratically. The outer scanners flickered, and the once clear signal turned to static. "Damn it!" Kael cursed, slamming his fist on the console. "What the hell's happening?" Leaned over his shoulder, scanning the displays. There was a distortion in the system, like a tear in the fabric of space itself. Something was interfering with the signal. Then, like a bolt from the heavens, the ship lurched, throwing me forward against the console. I gasped as the gravity fields began to destabilize, causing the entire ship to shudder. "Hold on," Kael shouted, gritting his teeth as he fought to regain control. I grabbed onto the edge of the seat, my heart pounding in my chest. The Wraithling plunged forward, plummeting through the unstable drift like a comet lost in a storm. In the midst of the chaos, a voice crackled through the comms. Low, steady, haunting. "Nyari," I froze. The voice sounded like it came from a dream or a nightmare. Familiar, yet alien. My blood ran cold. "Who the hell is that?" Kael snapped, trying to reach for the comm unit, but I was faster. The voice continued. "You've come back to us. To the place you were always meant to return." My heart stuttered in my chest. I knew that voice. I had heard it when I was a child, echoing in my memories like a whisper from the past. I spoke, barely above a whisper. "Mother!" The ship jerked again, and the lights flickered. A dark cloud began to surround us, a swarm of black ships descending from the void. Their shapes were hard to distinguish, almost translucent, like shadows made flesh. "They found us," Kael muttered. "We're not getting out of this one." I didn't know what was worse, the sound of Kael's voice, or the cold, calculating presence that was closing in on us. The comms crackled again, and this time, a figure appeared on the screen. Tall, imposing. A woman with sharp features and an aura of power that radiated through the screen. It was my mother. She smiled at me, though there was nothing warm in her expression. "You're too late, daughter. Your sanctuary is no more." The signal distorted, and her face vanished, replaced by a swirling black void. My breath caught in my throat. "What the hell are they doing?" Kael hissed, slamming his fist against the control panel. I reached for his hand. "We need to leave. Now!" But before I could act, the darkness consumed us. The world around me seemed to dissolve into a swirling blur as the Wraithling was pulled deeper into the void. The black ships surrounded us, their edges flickering like shattered glass. The once silent space was now alive with the hum of advanced technology, far beyond anything I had ever known. I felt a wave of vertigo crash over me, but there was no time to falter. Kael's grip on the controls tightened as he fought to stabilize the ship, his brow furrowed with determination. I could see the strain in his eyes, the exhaustion from pushing the ship too far. "We can't keep this up." Kael shouted over the din of alarms blaring through the cockpit. "This ship wasn't built for this level of—" He didn't finish his sentence. Another blast of static overwhelmed the comms, and I felt the pull intensify. Whatever was surrounding us, it wasn't just the ships. It was the very fabric of space itself, warping and bending, twisting us into its grasp. I held on tight, my fingers aching from the pressure, as the stars outside blurred into streaks of light. My heart raced in time with the erratic pulse of the ship. "Kael, what's happening?" I yelled, trying to keep my voice steady. The fear was creeping up my throat like a dark shadow, threatening to swallow me whole. "I don't know," Kael admitted, his voice tight with frustration. "But we're not alone anymore. I can feel them." Before he could finish, a low hum filled the cabin, vibrating through the ship's structure. The lights flickered, then dimmed. The familiar control panels flashed erratically, then went completely dark. It was as though we had entered a place where the laws of physics didn't apply, a place outside the reach of any logic. The Wraithling groaned as it was pulled further into the heart of this unfamiliar darkness. I watched in horror as our instruments blinked out of existence, one by one. Our only connection to the outside world, the fragile thread of communication we had left, vanished with an eerie finality. "Kael," I whispered, my voice trembling, despite my best efforts to stay calm. "What is this place?" "This isn't just a ship," he murmured, eyes wide as he stared at the flickering display. We're in a void. An artificial one, created by someone, or something, far more advanced than we ever imagined. I could feel the tension in the air, the pressure mounting as the darkness closed in. There was no way to escape it now. We were trapped. The black ships circled us like predators closing in on their prey. They were silent, almost predatory in their movements, as though they were waiting for something. Waiting for us. I've never felt anything like this, Kael said, his voice strained. Whatever's controlling these ships, it's not human, not Mirayan, it's ancient, and it's pulling us deeper. My mind raced. What could be ancient enough to control this kind of technology? What could be powerful enough to manipulate space itself? And then, the voice. The same voice from before, the one that had haunted me, echoing through the comms. Nyari, you return to us. The time has come. You must take your place. My blood ran cold. The voice. It was my mother's. But now it was joined by others, a chorus of whispers, like voices from the deepest corners of the universe, all speaking in unison. You are the key, they said in a chilling, unified tone. You are the one who will lead us. Lead who? I screamed, my hands clenched into fists. What are you talking about? I don't… But the voices didn't answer. They simply continued to chant, their words swirling around me, heavy, with the weight of something far beyond my understanding. Kael, I don't know what they want from me, I whispered, barely able to breathe as I stared out at the endless blackness. I don't know how to stop this. Kael's face was pale, his jaw clenched in determination. He wasn't showing fear, not in the way I was, but I could see it in his eyes, the same recognition of something far too big, too dangerous to confront head-on. We'll figure it out, he said, though the words seemed hollow, as if he was trying to convince himself as much as me. But we need to get to Viridian. If there's any hope of getting out of this, it's there. It has to be. But even as he spoke, the black ships closed in tighter. I could feel their presence, their technology probing the Wraithling, testing it, pushing it. We're not going to make it to Viridian, I whispered, more to myself than to Kael. No, he replied, his voice quiet. But we're going to make sure they don't get what they want. Not without a fight. He was right. We couldn't let them win. Whatever was happening, whatever they wanted from me, we couldn't let them take control. The ship shuddered once more, and I looked out into the void, my heart heavy. The darkness felt alive, pressing against me from all sides. The coldness seeped in as though space itself had turned against us. We weren't just on the edge of space anymore. We were in a place outside of time and reality, a place where the rules didn't apply. Hold on, Kael said, his voice low, his fingers flying over the controls once more. I've got one last trick. It's risky, but it might give us the time we need. I didn't ask him what it was. I didn't care. I just needed to believe that there was still a chance. But the moment he activated the maneuver, a pulse of blinding light erupted from the Wraithling's engines, and the darkness around us shifted. It didn't disappear, but the pressure, just for a moment, relented. In that brief instant, I could see something that hadn't been visible before. A planet. A glowing orb floating in the distance, bathed in light. A place I recognized. Viridian. We're not done yet, Kael said, his eyes locked onto the display. Not by a long shot. The Wraithlings surged forward, tearing through the darkness, heading for the one place that could save us. But I knew, deep in my bones, that what waited for us on Viridian wasn't going to be what we expected. Not anymore. The Wraithling tore through the dark expanse of the void, a streak of light cutting through the suffocating blackness, heading toward Viridian. I could feel the ship's engines straining against the pressure, pushing us faster, harder, than it ever had before. Kael's face was set in a determined mask, but his eyes flickered with doubt. The feeling of being hunted, of being trapped, lingered like a shadow, no matter how much speed we gained. Every second that passed felt like an eternity, the distance between us and Viridian growing shorter. Yet still, I could sense the approach of something worse. We weren't alone anymore. "We're almost there," Kael muttered, eyes fixed on the stars ahead, his hands flying over the controls. "Hold on." I nodded, but my heart wasn't in it. My mind kept returning to the voice, the whispering chorus that had filled the ship's comms, the dark, omnipotent presence that had claimed me as the key. What did they want from me? And why did it feel like I was being dragged into something I couldn't escape? As we neared Viridian, the stars began to shift, and the ship's systems came back online. The long silence that had plagued us for what felt like an eternity finally broke. The lights flickered back on, and the hum of the engines became a familiar, comforting sound. But it wasn't enough to calm my nerves. There was something wrong. Viridian loomed ahead, a glowing, crystalline planet that I had known since childhood. Its towering spires and gleaming cities stretched high into the sky, like a beacon of hope in the distance. It had always been a symbol of safety, a sanctuary where the laws of the universe didn't apply, a place of refuge. But as we drew closer, something didn't feel right. The planet was different. The atmosphere was thick with an unnatural tension, the surface glowing with a strange, almost sickly hue. The once vibrant, serene cityscapes were now cracked and crumbling, their beautiful structures marred by what seemed like wounds, scars on the planet's surface. "I don't like this," I said, voice barely above a whisper. Kael didn't respond. His jaw was tight, and his eyes were darting across the readouts with an intensity that only increased the weight in my chest. "I should have known," he finally said, his voice hoarse. "This is a trap." "What?" "No, it can't be," I replied, trying to ignore the knot of fear that was spreading through my stomach. "Viridian has always been our last hope. It's supposed to be a safe haven." "Not anymore," Kael growled, his knuckles white on the controls. "They've been waiting for you, Nyari. It's all a lie." The Wraithlings shuddered as we entered Viridian's orbit, the turbulence shaking the ship's fragile frame. The artificial intelligence systems were flickering, and the communication signals were fading. Something was blocking us from contacting the planet's surface. I stood, moving toward the viewports. The cities were now just ruins, the gleaming towers now twisted metal and charred stone. There was no sign of life, no movement, no spark of the energy that had once made Viridian such a beacon of civilization. "Kael," I whispered, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "What is this?" "They knew you were coming," Kael replied, his voice heavy with a realization he'd been holding back. "Your mother, the council. They've all been working together, trying to force you into this, into whatever role they've decided for you." "They knew you were coming," Kael replied, his voice heavy with a realization he'd been holding back. "Your mother, the council. They've all been working together, trying to force you into this, into whatever role they've decided. For you." The truth hit me like a slap in the face. My own mother, the one I had always trusted, had played a part in this. She had known what was coming. She had known that I was the key. But to what? What had they planned? Before I could ask any more questions, the ship jolted again, this time more violently than before. The outer shields flickered, and the console flashed a red warning. "They're locking onto us," Kael said, his voice urgent. "We have to make a break for it. Get to the surface now!" The ship's engine screamed in protest as Kael engaged the emergency thrusters, sending us plummeting toward Viridian's surface. The ground was fast approaching, and as we descended, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. An enormous structure in the distance, a massive monolithic tower rising from the center of what was left of the capital city. Its black, stone surface was jagged, glowing faintly with energy. "They've been waiting for us there," Kael muttered, his face grim. "I think that's where they're taking us." As the wraithling plunged toward the surface, I felt a rising sense of dread. There was no escaping now. We were being pulled into the heart of something I didn't understand, a place where the lines between friend and enemy blurred. The ground rushed up to meet us, and with a violent crash, the ship slammed into the cracked earth, its hull groaning under the impact. The engine sputtered and died, leaving us in a tense silence. For a moment, we sat there breathing heavily, the dust settling around us. I could hear my heart thumping in my ears and Kael's labored breathing beside me. "We need to go now," Kael said, voice tight. "Before they get here." We didn't wait. We couldn't. The moment the ship's hatch opened, I was already moving, my legs unsteady from the rough landing. But I pushed through. Kael was right behind me, his hand gripping my arm as we ran toward the looming tower in the distance. As we neared the base of the structure, I saw them. Figures standing in the shadows, watching us. The air was thick with the energy of anticipation, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. They were waiting for me. We stopped just outside the massive doors, and I turned to Kael. "Do you think we can fight them?" Kael's eyes were hard, and I saw the same fear that had been gnawing at me in his gaze. "I don't know, but we have to try." Before we could take another step, the doors opened, and a figure emerged from the shadows. My heart stopped. It was her, my mother. She was standing there, tall and regal as ever, her dark eyes fixed on me with an expression of both sorrow and resolve. "Nyari," she said softly, her voice calm, but there was something cold in it that sent a shiver down my spine. "It's time." The sight of my mother standing there, framed by the shadows of the towering monolith, froze me in place. For a moment, I could only stare at her, my mind struggling to process the flood of emotions: shock, anger, betrayal. I had never imagined this moment, this confrontation, would come so soon, and certainly not in a place like this. She stepped forward, her movements graceful and deliberate, as though this entire scene was nothing more than a carefully rehearsed performance. Her dark eyes I had inherited, pierced through me with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "Mother, why?" The words barely escaped my lips, but they carried the weight of years of unanswered questions, of pain I hadn't known how to voice. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me about what was coming?" Her lips tightened into a thin line, but there was no hint of regret in her expression. "You were never meant to understand," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had long made peace with the difficult choices they had made. "You are the key, Nyari. It was always going to be you." I shook my head, trying to make sense of her words. "The key? The key to what? To this destruction?" "What have you done to Viridian? To everything we've ever known?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced toward the towering structure behind her, as though she were contemplating whether to reveal the truth. The air around us seemed to grow colder, the weight of her silence hanging heavy. Then, in a voice that barely whispered through the growing tension, she spoke. "What you see here is the price of power, Nyari. The price we've all paid. Viridian was never just a sanctuary. It was a front, a place to hide what we were truly building. An empire, a legacy that could not be destroyed no matter the cost." I took a step forward, my anger bubbling up, fighting to break free from the knot in my throat. "An empire? You built all of this? With lies, with deceit? You sacrificed everything, everyone, for power?" The words cut through the air like daggers, and I could feel my pulse quickening, the rage growing inside me. "And you want me to be a part of it? To take my place in all this madness?" Her gaze softened for a moment, but only for a moment. "I didn't ask for this either, Nyari. But it's too late to turn back now. The forces at play are far beyond what you or I can control. This was always your fate. My fate? I laughed bitterly, though there was no humor in it. You always told me I could be whatever I wanted, but now you want me to be a puppet, just another piece in your game. A heavy sigh escaped her lips, and she looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange kind of sorrow. It's not that simple. You were born into this, Nyari. You were always meant to be part of the plan, the power, the bloodline. It's all a part of who you are. I took another step forward, my fists clenched at my sides. No, I don't want this. I don't want any of this. Then you leave me no choice. Her voice was colder now, more final. The Empire cannot survive without its key, and you are the key. Suddenly the ground beneath us trembled, and I felt the distinct hum of energy pulsing through the air. The doors behind her opened wider, and more figures stepped out from the shadows. Soldiers, figures cloaked in black, their faces hidden behind masks, their armor gleaming with the same eerie glow that had surrounded Viridian. Kael stepped beside me. His eyes locked on my mother, his hand instinctively reaching for the blaster holstered at his side. We can't let you do this, he said, his voice low but filled with resolve. Don't be a fool, Kael, my mother said, her tone devoid of emotion. This is bigger than you or me, bigger than all of us. The path we've taken cannot be undone. Not now. The soldiers advanced, and my heart raced in my chest. My eyes darted around, searching for any possible escape. But there was none. We were surrounded, and the weight of my mother's betrayal hung heavily in the air, choking me. Step aside, Kael, my mother ordered, her voice cold as steel. Kael's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. I won't let you control her. Not like this. Not without a fight. You'll fight if you must, she said with a hint of amusement. But it will make no difference. You have no idea what you're up against. I turned to Kael, my heart pounding in my chest. We need to leave, now. But as I turned back toward the ship, I felt it, the pulse of energy, the weight of it pressing down on me. The air seemed to thicken, like an invisible hand gripping me by the throat. And then I saw it, an energy field, shimmering just above the ground, an impenetrable barrier that had appeared out of nowhere. We were trapped. I spun back toward my mother, my anger flaring again. What have you done? This is the future, Nyari, she said, her voice calm, almost pitying. The world you thought you knew is gone. And the sooner you accept your role, the sooner you can begin to wield the power that's always been yours. I shook my head. No, I'll never be a part of this. You don't have a choice. I felt a wave of power wash over me, an energy unlike anything I had ever experienced. It felt like it was pulling at the very core of my being, as though it was trying to control me, shape me into something I wasn't. My knees buckled, and I gasped, the strength of it overwhelming. Nyari, you're stronger than this, Kael's voice broke through the haze, pulling me back, grounding me. Don't let her do this. I looked up at him, my heart beating faster than ever before. How do we stop this? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze locked on my mother, his expression filled with both defiance and regret. We don't. Not unless we're willing to do what it takes. I could feel the decision looming ahead, the weight of it pressing down on me. There was no turning back. If we were going to survive this, we had to fight. Not just for Viridian, but for everything that came after. The air around me crackled with tension, the pulse of energy surging in waves, each one pushing me further back, threatening to overwhelm my senses. My mother's cold gaze never wavered, as if the moment we were trapped, the game had already been decided in her favor. The shimmer of the energy field around us glowed brighter, cutting off any hope of escape. Kael was beside me, his body tense, his expression grim but determined. His hand gripped mine, grounding me in the storm of emotions and power that raged within and around us. "We have to fight back, Nyari," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We can't let her win." I nodded, though the weight of what we were facing was almost too much to bear. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a fight for everything I had ever known, for the future of Viridian and its people. But as I looked at my mother, I realized how deeply entwined our fates were. She had manipulated everything, controlled the very threads of my existence, all to create this future, this empire. And now it was up to me to stop it. "You can't. Stop what's already in motion, Nyari," my mother's voice sliced through the air, a calm certainty lacing every word. "You were born into this. You are the key to it all. You've always known that deep down, haven't you?" "No!" I shouted, feeling the power of my own defiance surge inside me. "I've never wanted any of this. You've lied to me. To everyone." Her gaze flickered, a brief flash of something I couldn't quite place, and for a moment, I thought I saw regret. But it was gone as quickly as it had come, replaced by the icy resolve that had defined her for as long as I could. "Remember, you think this is a lie?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with an edge that made my stomach churn. "This is the truth, Nyari, and you will come to understand it soon enough. You will see that everything I've done, everything I've sacrificed, has been for the greater good." "The greater good?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've destroyed everything for the greater good?" The soldiers behind her shifted, closing the distance between us. Their eyes, cold and unreadable behind their masks, never left us. My mind raced, searching for any way out, any means of survival. But as the energy field continued to hum, I realized there was no easy escape. There was only one way forward. Kael's hand tightened around mine, his grip steady. "We're not giving up, Nyari. We can still fight." I turned to him, meeting his gaze. His eyes were fierce, filled with a fire that matched my own. In that moment, I knew we had no choice but to face this, to fight with everything we had left, for the sake of everything we loved, for the sake of Viridian, and for ourselves. The soldiers were almost upon us, their heavy boots echoing in the stillness of the chamber. But Kael wasn't waiting. He surged forward, his movements quick and precise. In one fluid motion, he drew his blaster and fired. The first soldier fell, but the others didn't hesitate. They closed in. I was at his side in an instant, drawing my own weapon. The energy crackled around us, charging the atmosphere with a palpable sense of danger. The first shot I fired missed its mark, but I didn't hesitate. I aimed again, this time hitting my target square in the chest. The soldier crumpled to the ground. But there were more. So many more. We fought side by side, dodging and weaving, firing as we moved. The sounds of blaster fire and the grunts of the soldiers filled the air, the chaos unfolding faster than I could process. I could feel the rush of adrenaline, the heat of the battle coursing through my veins, but I also knew that we couldn't sustain this forever. There were too many of them, and they had the advantage of numbers, of preparation. My mother stood back, watching the fight unfold, her expression unreadable. She made no move to help the soldiers, no move to interfere. She was letting it happen. She was letting us fight, knowing that the outcome had already been decided in her favor. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. She had never planned for this battle to be one we could win. The moment we stepped onto this planet, we had been walking into her trap. I ducked behind a large piece of debris, my heart pounding in my chest. Kael was still firing, moving with precision, but I could see the weariness in his movements. We couldn't keep this up. Not against so many. "You're wasting your time," my mother's voice called out, a bitter edge creeping into it now. "You've never stood a chance." I looked up at her, my chest tight. "You'll never control me. You may have controlled everything else but not me." She didn't respond. Instead, she motioned for her soldiers to advance again. This was it. We couldn't keep running, couldn't keep fighting like this. We needed to make a stand. The air around us buzzed with an intensity I could feel deep in my bones. The battle had raged on for what felt like an eternity, but now, standing before the heart of my mother's empire, it all came down to this moment. There was no more room for hesitation, no more time for second guesses. The future of Viridian, of everything we had fought for, hung in the balance. My mother stood before me, her eyes cold and unwavering, as if she were an unstoppable force of nature. Her power, her empire, it had all been built on control. And now, standing at the edge of this moment, I realized what I had to do. I looked at Kael, my partner in this fight, my heart racing. "Are you ready?" His eyes locked onto mine, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker, perhaps fear, perhaps resolve. But he didn't hesitate. "Ready as I'll ever be." We moved together, pushing forward toward the control panel that held the fate of everything we had ever known. The soldiers were closing in again, but this time we weren't running. We were fighting for something bigger than ourselves, for Viridian, for freedom. Kael reached the console first, and as he worked to disable it, I could feel the oppressive weight of my mother's power bearing down on us. Her gaze was unyielding, but there was no turning back now. Not after everything. "You cannot destroy what I've built," my mother spat, her voice venomous. "You were always meant to be a part of this. I created this future. It's your destiny." I stood my ground. "I won't be part of your lie. I won't let you destroy everything for power." The air crackled with energy, and I knew that the final moment was upon us. The control panel began to flicker, the hum of power surging, but Kael wasn't done. He slammed his fist against a final lever, and the entire system began to break down, piece by piece. The ground trembled beneath us, and I could see the fear in my mother's eyes for the first time. "You don't understand," she whispered, almost pleading. This was the only way, but the system was already failing, and the power that had held us captive for so long was slipping away. My heart pounded as the control panel erupted in a final burst of energy, and the power grid that had sustained her empire began to falter. The soldiers faltered, their once impregnable force now in disarray. I turned to face my mother, the weight of the decision heavy in my chest. "It's over." For the first time, my mother's expression shifted, uncertainty, regret, and something else that I couldn't quite place. Her empire was crumbling around her, and the weight of her past choices bore down on her. With one last glance, I turned and walked away, knowing that we had taken the first step toward rebuilding. The battle had been won, but the true fight had only just begun. We had shattered the chains of control. Now it was up to us to shape the future, one free of lies, free of manipulation. And with Kael by my side, I knew we had a chance.